Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Eric Nelson, Nelson Gunsmithing. It's one of the first of a few videos I'm going to do trying to show people how to do some gunsmithing. Hopefully it's a little more detailed. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, unlike some. Today this is real simple. What we're doing is installing the HK Short Reset system. This is by Grayguns. The gun we're working on is an HK P30 with the thumb safety. The HK P30s are awesome guns. Well, first thing we always do, always confirm that we're clear, no magazine. No ammo on the table. So the P30s are great guns, one of my favorite carry guns. I love the fact that they have a decocker. I love the fact that you can put it on safe while it's in double action or single action mode. And you can decock it while it's on safe. Truly a great safe action. So this will be pretty simple today. Like I said, we're putting the short throw reset. There we go. Boom. Alright, and we're not working on the slide today. If it does ever come up though, the slide is only a couple of roll pins. It's pretty self-explanatory. Maybe I'll do that in a different video if people want. Okay, so there we go. So first one is you just pull out your slide release. I'm going to move my little parts tray over here so you can see where I'm putting stuff. I kind of like to keep this sorted by major component. We do have to tear this down all the way, unfortunately. Your trigger, that's a one-way pin. You can only press it out from right to left. And that, I forgot the first rule of gunsmith. Oops, got my camera here. Make sure we're all still lined up. There we go. First rule of gunsmithing, I got excited. Make sure if you're taking out something under pressure, you capture it. Second rule of gunsmithing is have a bench of the wall. Next gunsmith bench I built, it's just going to be molding everywhere so you can't possibly get anything stuck in the side. Okay, so there's the trigger. We'll get that out in a second. Yeah, it's just a little stuck. There we go. Back strap, side strap, side strap. You ever see how easy that was? Back strap plug. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure your hammer's forward. Use your decocker. When it's stripped, always use your decocker and ease the hammer forward. Okay, if you pull the trigger or you just let the decocker fly forward, you're going to do damage to the frame of the gun as it's beating himself up. There we go, with no tension on it. That pops right out. Captured that. 2, 3, 4. And this hammer pulled right out. Now you can see I got this factory goo on it. I don't love it. It's a kind of grease. I think it's like a moly grease. But it's kind of gross. So I'm going to take it off of there. We'll come back to that in a minute here. Okay. The next step is, now that we've got the hammer out, we're not putting tension on the... Now that we've got the hammer spring out, the hammer and the sear assembly are no longer under tension. Now the sear assembly only goes out from right to left. Boom, didn't even take a hammer. Okay, and again, I like to have little separate pockets here. One. I'm trying to go slow so you guys can see which order these go in. Oops, sear lifted out. Alright. Yeah, I'll show you that here in a second. Disconnector. Yeah, stupid springs holding it. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing here. There's a small roll pin. That's what will hold these on. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the safeties off of here real quick. There's one. There we go, and you've only got to get one off of there. Sorry, let me clarify that. This only goes in from right to left, so you only need to get the left one off of there. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, now that's the hammer. Oops. It's the disconnect. That's the hammer. Safety bar drops out. The trigger's a little tricky. You just got to kind of finagle it out of there. There it goes. Captured plunger here. Now this little guy hung me up last time I worked on one of these. That plunger right there. Hopefully you guys can see that. It took me forever to figure out how to take it out of there. And the funny thing is, it's not held in there by anything at all. Speaking of parts under pressure, last one kind of fell out real slow. That one popped loose. Okay. And the only thing I'm not taking out the magazine release on this because that's more work than I want to do right now. And I'm not taking out the slide catch or the slide catch spring because I don't need to. So I can see there's a little schmoo down in there. I don't know if that's showing up too well. That's more of that molly grease. And I don't like that stuff, so a little acetone. I'm going to wipe that out of there. Now then, something else I want to point out. There is a spring here. We do not need to take that out for this operation. If it does need to come out, you can't see it. There's a tab just on the inside, and you need to push from the inside of the magazine well towards the back of the gun, and then you can lift that spring out of there. So that spring right there, hopefully it's showing up. Okay, so I'm going to take the old spring, I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to take the old bar, I'm going to set it aside. Now let's look at these parts real quick. We're going to inspect these real fast, make sure there's no damage. They're all looking pretty good. Now, this is one little touch I do, because that could be a lot smoother. I keep a little Craytex wheel. Yeah, look at that. Much brighter. Much brighter. There we go. So I was just checking something there. I thought I misplaced a part. Old Gunsmith told me repeatedly at great length, because I obviously didn't get it the first time, go slow. Proceed deliberately, you will have a more harmonious outcome. I'll just set that there. Because here's the replacement bar. See how tiny these pieces are. Alright, trash out of the way. So, first things first, I want to get this plunger replaced. Now, another little trick I learned. You take a little bit of grease that you're going to use, make a little pile of it. It won't hurt anything, but it's kind of a handy way to not have to double back every few seconds and look for something. So what I'm going to roll this in a little grease. And apply a little bit to the plunger here. And again, not very much. You want to leave the thinnest of films. So there's a square-sided notch here that can only go in one way. And this is going to take a little bit of finagling because I got fat fingers. In fact, I'm going to make this easy on myself. Use my those pliers here. Very gently. And all I'm using the pliers for is just probably enough pressure to line the part up. Let's see, little parts go flying. 90% of gunsmithing is walking around on your hands and knees going, where was that thing? The other part's looking for that tool you had in your hands 5 seconds ago. Finagle that into there. Cool. There we go. I got it most of the way in. I'm going to use a punch. Boom. There we go. Now you can see that little plunger is reciprocating. Anytime you put in something that's a plunger like that or a mechanism, if you get in the habit of just kind of checking as you go, you're going to find that it's a lot easier to get stuff done. Pardon my language. Oh, I don't want to get zucked because it's going to be up on YouTube and stuff. Alrighty. So, there's an old adage I like to follow, and it's oil where it slides and grease where it pivots. I've got a little bit of this Rand CLP. They sent this to me for free. I've been trying it out. So far, I like it. I can't say I can see something that definitively recommends it over Slip 2K, but I promised I'd try it for a while. Okay, so here we go. Got a little oil on that. We're going to put some grease on this hammer. The grease I'm using, now I really like this stuff. This is the Rand Hog Grease. I've been using Jig for a little while now, and that's okay, but this seems to have it goes on a lot thinner. I'm really liking how it feels. Okay. So this part here. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. What we need to do next is reinstall the trigger and the trigger bar. Now I'm not sure if this is the H&K approved way to do it, but I found it was a heck of a lot easier to do those first and then come back and do the rest of it later. So there we go. Okay, so the trigger, again, you just kind of wiggle it and figgle it until you find your way in. Now then, one tool that is absolutely indispensable is this guy. Made this. This is for installing the trigger return spring because it's under a lot of tension. and it's really tricky to do by hand. There it is. The other part is some pressure on the trigger, index finger on that pin. I want to try and get the pin oriented as much to the, oh gosh, I want to say it's about 15 degrees beyond the vertical, because the hard part is getting it behind the trigger. There you go. Can you see there? Behind the trigger and resting up on the frame there. And then we just get a little wiggle on the jiggle. Little wiggle on the jiggle, and it's in. That's it. That's how you reinstall that trigger return spring. It is almost impossible to do it without this tool. I made this one. You can buy it at HK.com for HKparts.com for 15 bucks. So we're done with that tool. All right, trigger bar. Again, I just want to wipe this off. So this is not a major component, but when you're reassembling a gun, every little bit helps. So you put a little grease on this guy. So this, you pull your trigger forward, there's a little circle there, a little indent, and you just drop that in place. The nice thing is that there's only one obvious place that trigger can go. If you try and put it up above the hammer, it won't work. So you just put it in and put it flush with the frame. Okay, here we are, back to the hammer. Kind of rest my hammer here. Then I'm going to take my safety, from the right side, and push it through. A little wiggle and a jiggle, okay? Now then, this part is a little tricky. Oops. A little grease on the spring, a little grease on the plunger. This is the captive plunger for your safety. There you go, and that spring is tapered. There we go. All right, everyone following so far? Sorry, so we're putting the safety on. We're going to use some needle nose pliers here, because I got fat fingers. And we kind of start it into the hole there. There we go. Now, another tool which is really handy is to have these roll pin starters. And then, if you're really balling, you've got a cup tip punch. There we go, just enough to get it started there. There we go. And then we use our roll pin punch. To drive it completely flush. And then we test it. Looks good, right? The trigger looks good. Okay. Making some progress here. Let's see if I can get this to balance here for you. And again, you want to be in the habit of putting your tools back up between uses. You can keep a couple out, but you don't want to be in the habit of leaving tools on your bench, because that's how stuff gets scuffed up. Okay, sorry for the jump there. I actually had this thing completely reassembled, and then for some reason I could not get the trigger to reset every time. And that's bad. It should do it every time. The culprit is this spring. This is the one that they sent over with the kit. That's the original. As you can see, the one with the kit, quite a bit thinner, not as robust. So we're going to go back to the original size one. Hopefully this works. Get a little more grease going over here. And again, I'm sorry for the cuts here. This is a little bit of a learning experience for me. I haven't done a whole ton of these kits. And I also want to make sure that you guys see what I'm doing and that it's explained to your satisfaction. Alright, so we're just going to start over. So we have the trigger bar in place. There we go. I think I hear my cat. That's how far I got, guys. I got the whole thing reassembled. All right. So we have the trigger bar installed. We have the trigger return spring installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop this in. Now I apologize, this part I'm not really sure I can show you because it takes a little bit of work. There we go. So once I have it, I'm going to use my needle nose pliers very gently just to turn that. I use my brass tip punch. Because it's a plastic piece, and those little guys, these pliers will mar it if you grab and try and push it into place with those. Okay, so there we go. Sorry about that. I had to get over it. Push it in. As you can see, it only goes in one way. We test it. Get the damn trigger out of the way. And we're going to test it a little. So that's moving freely. There we go. That's what we want it to. There we go. We want it to move nice and freely. Okie dokie. Onwards and upwards. Trigger bar got up in place. Now, the next thing we have to do is put the hammer in. Hammer just kind of sits there for a second. We're going to take our safety, and from the right side, we install the safety. Give it a little wiggle and a jiggle. There we go. The safety can only go in one way, so we need to torque it back and forth a little bit. We have here the plunger and the plunger spring for the safety. That only goes in one way. At least on mine, only goes in one way. And we want to check it to make sure it's got a little plunge to it. It does. So now what we're going to do, put our safety on there. And you can see how it reciprocates. That means that the plunger is working correctly. Alright, now, I have a handy little tool for this. This is a roll pin starter punch, okay? There we go. Just enough to get it started there, right? And then we can use a cup tip punch. There we go, get it seated on there. I'm using just a little 2 ounce hammer, doesn't take hardly anything. And we got that in place. Remember to keep the tools off the bench. These are just sub-flush. Let me make sure this still works. Yep. Now, you don't have to use all those different punches. I've got them, so I use them. You can get by with a very basic set of punches, but one thing that is absolutely indispensable for gunsmithing are roll-tipped punches. As you can see here, I have a flat tip punch, or I have a roll tip punch, and I have a flat tip punch. Now, for starting roll pins, you can use your roll pin captures, but for putting them in, you need to use these guys. Now, roll pins are not meant to be reused. I grabbed fresh roll pins for this job. Reusing roll pins, you know, At the SIG school, they said absolutely never. I've known a few guys who said they've gotten away with it. To err on the side of caution, for any duty gun, your roll pin should be placed anytime they come out of the firearm. Okay, next step. We have our tapered pin. Okay, and one pin holds all these four components. So we're going to start the pin in from the left side. Okay, and the four components we have is the disconnect, the secure release. We have the new short reset device. I'm going to move this over here. New short reset bar from Grayguns. And then we have the disconnect. And the disconnect, as I said, I took over and I polished it fairly aggressively on a piece of marble. And it was pretty badly out of... it was wallowed out a little bit. Which happens, you know. HK is great, but nobody's perfect. So here we go. Put the hammer a little forward. This goes in behind those two metal hooks. I want to emphasize this again. You see those two hooks there, right? These two spring hooks here. Those are leaf springs. It goes in behind it. And this is a little loose. Okay. There we go. You see how it just dropped right in there? There we go. We get that started. So this is one of those processes where having something called a slave pin comes in handy. I don't have any made. I haven't had too much trouble with this one, but if I got really hung up, I would build some slave pins. And a slave pin is just a pin built to the same diameter that goes in the other side. And that kind of helps you, you know, jiggle stuff in, get it mounted, and then you just push the slave pin out. So again, here's your release, and that goes in again between the hammer and that spring. There we go. Just kind of feel that guy in. You want to push that just sub flush. And here we go. Now this one was kind of a by feel thing. There we go. So I just kind of had to feel it in there, and that comes with a little bit of experience. But you know that if it's lined up properly with these holes, which I'm trying to do right now, you know you're on the right track. Here we go. Had to get that safety off. Okay, here we go. We're going to try this again. Boy, hopefully it works this time. So, there we go. Put some oil on this bad boy. There we go. Boom. Oh, there we go. That's much better. Yeah, that was right. That was hanging up pretty heavily there. That's a little stiffer now, but it's going to run reliably, and I will take running reliably over anything else. Okay. So, our disconnect's working. Pivot as they need to. We got spring tension on the disconnect and on the sear. You always want to check as you go, right? If you install a part, just make sure it works. That will save you a ton of time for teardown. To be honest with you, a lot of the time I lost. If I had just done this 20 or 30 times, I would have felt it catch. But, you know, I can make mistakes too. Alright, so the next step, we're going to put the hammer in. little grease on the hammer here. So the hammer goes in like, okay, goes in thusly. And you do need to have the hammer forward when you do this. Goes in thusly. You're just going to have to feel it in. And the way you can tell is you'll look in the back and you'll see it moving, okay? There we go. That hammer is inserted correctly. There's a strut on the back of the hammer that it needs to touch. All right, there we go. Spring, boom. Too easy, right? Now, I'm holding this gun really weird ways, and I'm doing that so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing here. So we're going to start this here. This is one of those kind of by feel things. There it is, got it. Just didn't push it in quite far enough. There we go, that's it. That's how you get the hammer installed. At this point, the gun is functionally reassembled. It cocks, the safety goes on. We can decock it. We can put the safety on. Boy, that's lovely. There we go. So again, we're always checking as we go, right? Big thing again, while you've got it disassembled, do not drop the hammer. Okay, that is how a gun beats itself apart. The hammer is meant to strike the firing pin. The firing pin is massive and it's supported by a spring. If you're not careful, you'll tear a gun apart just pulling the trigger willy-nilly. Okay. So let's put the grip panels back on. So I'm sorry if this is a little disjointed. First one I've ever done of these, using my cell phone. I want you guys to see my mistakes though. Okay? I mean, you know, I'm a generalist. I'm a gunsmith, but I'm a generalist. I work on everything. So I don't sit there and do, you know, 20 of these a month. This is only like, well, I'm not going to tell you how many of these I've done. It's a little embarrassing, but you know, that's part of the thing of being a gunsmith is you never say I can't. You never say I can't up front. I've said I can't afterwards, and I hate saying that to people. But my rule is if the buck stops with me, the buck never stops with me. I will send you to a guy who can fix it. Case in point, Bushmaster ACR barrel came in. I looked at it and said, you know what? This requires a skilled machinist. And I went and I found the best ACR specialist in the country, and I referred the guy to him. And I'm glad I did. That's a gun that I would not have liked to have screwed up. There we go. Kind of love that in. So you can see how that trigger return spring sits on your slide release, right? We test it. It works. Push that back out. Let's grab the slide. Beautiful. Okay, so now we do our functions check, right? First things first, let's make sure the safety works. Works in single action. Cock it. Works in double action. See, they'll bring the hammer back, but it still works. Fires in double action. Fires in single action. Decocks. Decocks with the safety engaged. There we go. So I'm going to show you how this trigger reset system works real quick, okay? So here's the, so pull the trigger, come back off of it, okay, rack it, there we go. Kind of hard to do 4 things at once there. So this shortens up the reset by quite a bit, makes it a little easier to hang on to, a little more tactile feel. I actually like that with the stronger spring in it. I'm going to give both to the customer and see what you like. That feels a lot better. I got a little more tactile reset there, and I'm big about that. Okay, that is how you completely detail strip the frame of a P30 H&K, and you reinstall the Grayguns Short Reset system. I did 2 of these now. One of these is a P30L, the other one is a standard P30 V3. A few notes, the V3 eliminated a few parts, so if you start wondering why you cannot find that missing hammer return spring, it is because it doesn't exist in the V3. This is my first video. I have to do some editing on it. It may look a little chunky, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, guys.